I thank everyone for being here. I'm going to call us to order. This is the November 30th, 2023 meeting of the Environmental Commission of the City of Ann Arbor. And this meeting is held in accordance with executive orders set in place in 2020 by the governor to effect social distancing and mitigate the spread of COVID-19. We intend to conduct the meeting similarly to an in-person meeting, and I ask you to be patient if there are technical difficulties. Public comment is welcome and will be via telephone only. To speak at public comment, call 888-788-0099 and enter meeting ID 922-9696-1644. I'll say that one again. ID 922-9696-1644. This information is available on the published agenda in the public notices section of the city website and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN channel 16. Channel 16, AT&T channel 99, and online at the a2gov.org watch CTN channel. And with that, I will ask Joe, and I want to introduce everyone to Joe Wang, who is here from the Office of Sustainability and Innovations. He is sitting in for Sean Reynolds, who is not available for tonight's meeting. So, Joe, if you would read the land heritage statement.
You bet. Yeah. Good to meet you all. And yeah, apologies. And thanks for bearing with me if at any point I do not have a full sense of what's going on. So thank you all. I acknowledge that the land the city of Ann Arbor occupies is the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, including Odawa, Ojibwe, and Bodewadmi and Wyandot peoples. I further acknowledge that our city stands, like almost all property in the United States, on lands obtained, generally in unconscionable ways, from indigenous peoples. The taking of this land was formalized by the Treaty of Detroit in 1807. Knowing where we live, work, study, and recreate does not change the past, but a thorough understanding of this ongoing consequences of this past can empower us in our work to create a future that supports human flourishing and justice for all individuals. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. And now would you please call the roll of the commission?
Yep. Yeah, bear with me here too. Councilmember Ackman.
Ackman here, Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Sorry. Vice Chairperson Brown.
Present in Ann Arbor.
Councilmember Calawart.
Here.
Commissioner Curtis.
Here, Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Dale. Do not see at the moment.
Right.
I had heard from Councilmember Dish that they will not be present today. Commissioner Graham.
I'm here.
Commissioner Gruber.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Marson.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Mirsky.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Chairperson Mitchell.
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Nedrich.
Here in Ann Arbor.
And Commissioner Wehing.
Here in Ann Arbor.
All right. Chair, you got a quorum.
All right, good. Thanks everyone for being here. I would like to initiate the approval of the agenda with one change, and that is to take a few minutes following public commentary to introduce one of our soon-to-be colleagues, Erin Donnelly. And I'll leave the details of that for that period of time. So with the approval of the group, I would like to insert that one item, introduction of Erin Donnelly following public commentary. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended, or if there are any other amendments?
So moved.
Okay, thanks. I got it. Okay. Move from Commissioner Mirsky, second Vice Chair Brown. Thank you. And next up is approval of the minutes from our October 26th meeting.
We need approval of the agenda. We just had a motion.
Oh, okay. Let's vote to approve the agenda. Thanks, Jen. I'll learn these rules sometime. Would everyone please vote on the agenda as amended? Looks like 100%. I'm going to assume Chris Graham is saying yes. And The next item is approval of the minutes. I would like to have a motion on approval of the minutes from October 26th.
I so move.
And moved and seconded by Commissioner Curtis. Moved by Brown, seconded Curtis. Can we vote to approve the minutes? Everyone raise your hand. Okay, okay.
I abstained because I wasn't in attendance.
Okay, thank you. Please indicate abstention from Commissioner Mirsky and someone else, right?
I abstain as well.
Okay. Commissioner Gruber. All right. And I think Commissioner Wayhang, are you in that category as well?
Yeah, I abstain.
Thank you. Okay. Let's move on. We've got our minutes and let's move on to public commentary. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. Please call 888-788-0099 and enter meeting ID 922-9696-1644. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one by calling out the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand, please press *9 on your phone. You'll hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. Then you press *6 to unmute your phone. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we may hear you clearly. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. Thank you.
Right.
Joe, do you see any callers
Yep.
interested in speaking?
Yep, we got a couple.
Okay.
First up is caller ending in 217.
Hello, my name is Sanaya Hosude, and I live at East Quad on the University of Michigan campus. I'm an undergraduate student. I am originally from Austin, Texas, and was living there during the ice storm in 2021 that left thousands without power. The blackout that lasted for days caused people to lose their livelihoods, their food, their health, and for some people, their lives. All this was due to the fact that the Texas grid is largely privately owned and therefore grossly unregulated. If we continue to rely on DTE for our energy, the citizens of Ann Arbor are also vulnerable to the same dangers that we faced in Austin. In addition, as a young person who's deeply worried about climate and the consequences of climate change, I understand that municipalizing our power is the best investment in renewable energy for the city of Ann Arbor. Municipalization is the only viable option for actually powering all Ann Arbor homes and businesses with renewable energy instead of fossil fuels. CCA is illegal, and while CEU is useful, but it can't power all of Ann Arbor. Therefore, I strongly urge you all to approve a phase 2 study so that we can continue moving towards municipalization. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller ending in 179.
Hello.
Hello.
My name is Vincent Matthew. I'm also a resident of East Quad at the University of Michigan, living in Ann Arbor. I was also calling in to voice my support for public power and the municipalization of the electric grid in Ann Arbor. I think as a university student, I've personally talked with other people living in Ann Arbor who aren't living at the University of Michigan, and a lot of those people are struggling with DTE right now because they know its ineffectiveness, and they have resorted a lot of them to using power banks because they know that they can't trust the system built in Ann Arbor at the moment. And other than that, and other than the people living in Ann Arbor, I also strongly advocate listening to the voices of the students of Ann Arbor who were largely affected during the beginning of the year of power outages, specifically in Oxford. A lot of these students, they're coming in as freshmen and they're trying to learn their way through the school life. And at that moment, they were led through a power outage and they did not have access to much of their electronics. And this was very frustrating for them. And I think this moment and this event could have easily been avoided if our electric grid was not privatized. So I would like to urge the council to look into public power as a better, safer, and more effective option. Thank you.
Thank you. And then we have caller ending in 245.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, my name is Kathleen Murphy. I live in the Ward 5 of Ann Arbor, and I'm calling to support the resolution to request the Ann Arbor City Council to pursue a phase 2 study for the municipalization of the power grid and all other means available to ease the burden of the currently available source of electricity, unreliable source of electricity by DTE. I very strongly support the municipalization effort, and I think therefore it is particularly important that we go ahead with this phase 2 study so that it has really the possibility of being put into practice. And I think that this study is therefore very important, and I commend the Environmental Commission for taking this on as a possibility, and I hope that it will pass the muster of the commission to go ahead with this and pass this on to City Council. So thank you very much. You have a very important role to play here, and I hope you can do it positively. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. No further callers.
All right. Thank you, Joe. And thank you everyone who called in. Our next agenda item is an introduction. And to kick us off, I'll recognize Brian Steglitz, who's here as our Public Services Administrator, who will be further introducing a new staffer who will be working with us on the Environmental Commission. Brian, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for hosting us, and thank you, Chair Mitchell, for allowing us the opportunity to introduce our new Environmental Services Manager, Erin Donnelly. I'm going to let her do the honors and have her talk for a couple minutes maybe about where she comes from and her background, but she's been on the job for maybe 3 days now, so she's quite new, but she's picking up things quickly, and she's really excited to be here and to be working for the city and have an opportunity to connect with this commission. So with that, I will turn it over to Erin.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Yeah, I think day 4 officially on the job. About a month ago, I moved out from Colorado, from the Denver area, where I'd been working as an environmental consultant for the past 9 years, doing a broad range of water resources work, but the bulk of my expertise is in kind of environmental compliance, specifically discharge permitting and general issues with water quality standards. And then I was also working on, things related to watershed management and ecosystem health, and then the occasional water supply project or big kind of water infrastructure projects. Prior to that, I was working for a small municipality on MS4 stormwater compliance. I was there for about 2 years. And then way before that, I was an intern with the state of Colorado in there as an environmental permit writer. So kind of the organization equivalent to Eagle here. So yeah, I'm in a new role, and the role itself is also new, the Environmental Services Manager. So I'll be kind of working to frame out what that position may look like. I'll be, refining and overseeing kind of an integrated environmental compliance program here at the city, and working to kind of plan and implement different environmental goals with the city. And yeah, excited to work with you all on those issues as well. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. I'm really glad that you're here. And I actually would like to just take a few minutes for the members of the commission to introduce themselves to you. I'm Rita Mitchell. I'm chair of the commission. My background is in quite a few years ago in public health, and I have become more of an active environmental outdoors type person on a volunteer level. And here I am. I'm chairing this commission. And I'm really happy that you're here. Thank you for joining in. Next up, I'm just going to call out Steve Brown, who is our vice chair of the commission.
Yeah, hi, Aaron. Welcome to Ann Arbor. My name is Stephen Brown. I'm a semi-retired pharmaceutical chemist, and I've been doing a lot of work with volunteering with various environmental organizations, mostly on toxics. Given my background in, I know something about toxicity and, you know, toxicology and chemistry.
Okay, I'm going to ask Chris Graham to introduce himself now.
Aaron, welcome to Ann Arbor. It's hard to leave Colorado, I suspect, especially if you're a skier. We have little tiny mountains up north, but there's still lots of fun. I'm a landscape architect by training, but a landscape contractor and gardener by profession. Doing that in my own business for more than 40 years and have been involved almost that long in natural features and natural areas affairs, not only in Ann Arbor, but in the state of Michigan.
Thank you, Chris. John Callowert, would you go next, please?
Hi, Aaron. I'm John, in my second term on the Environmental Commission, and also working with the Circular Economy Working Group, one of the subgroups we have on the commission.
Great.
And Marzan?
Hi, Aaron. Welcome. My name's Anne, and I'm on the Parks Advisory Commission, so I'm the liaison for that commission to the Environmental Commission. And look forward to working with you.
Hello.
Brooks Curtis.
Sure. Hi, Ann. My name's Brooks. I used to work for General Motors, but I'm retired now. So I do a lot of volunteering work for the city NAP and also the county NAP. That usually keeps me busy.
John Mirsky.
Welcome, Aaron. I am a retired engineer. I worked for Bosch, the German company. I'm a member and former chair of the Ann Arbor Energy Commission, and I'm liaison to the Environmental Commission. From the Energy Commission, I'm involved in a lot of climate, environmental, energy-related advocacy work, as well as in the affordable housing area. Glad to have you here.
Yeah.
We won't let you go.
Bridget Gruber.
Hi, Aaron. I'm Bridget. I work for the Graham Sustainability Institute at the University of Michigan. So I do environmental and sustainability education. And I'm a mom, and I'm excited to be part of this commission.
Next is Maisie Wayhang.
Hi, Aaron. I hold the youth commissioner position, and I'm really involved with youth advocacy and climate change in Ann Arbor, and as well as involved with the school district's sustainable efforts.
And Sarah Nedrick.
Hi, Aaron. Yeah, I'm Sarah Nedrich. So I currently am working for the state of Michigan, Eagle. My specialty is water. So I'm an environmental toxicologist by training. And I have background in wetland ecology and also work for the state in the remediation redevelopment division. So yeah, if you have any state questions, feel free to send them my way. Very, very excited that you were hired on. So
Thank you. I'm sure I will have questions.
yeah.
And Sarah, Dharma Ackman.
Hi there. I'm a council member liaison for the Environmental Commission. One of two. Councilmember Dish couldn't be here tonight. Congratulations on your position. I think you landed in a great place. Happy to meet you.
Thank you.
And sorry to say, we're missing, as Councilmember Ackman said, we're missing Councilmember Dish and Commissioner Anya Dale, who works in the university and sustainability issues. So you'll have a chance to meet her another time. I just want to say that I really appreciate working with this group of people. This is a really content-oriented and motivated group, and I think you'll enjoy being exposed to us. Is there anything else that either you or Brian would like to discuss at this point?
Not for me.
I don't
I'm
think
kind of here
so.
to listen today. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, you're very welcome. to stay, please do. I think we'll just move on with the agenda then. And that is moving into our new business section. We have a quick item, I think, which is approval of our proposed commission meeting calendar for 2024. And the meeting schedule for us is traditionally the fourth Thursday of each month, with the exception of our final year, which is this meeting represents a combined November-December meeting. And next year it'll be on December 5th instead of the end of November. So it's just however the calendar flows, we get 11 meetings in our year. Does anyone have any questions, concerns, or issues with the calendar as proposed? May I ask for a motion to approve the calendar? Got it from Chris Graham, second from Bridget Gruber. Thank you. And now a vote on the proposed calendar. Everybody raise your hand if you agree. Okay, got it. Thank you. Our next item is a presentation by our co-chair, Steve Brown, who has studied PFAS and worked in the state dealing with that particular threat to our public health. So Steve, I'm just going to let you take it away, and thank you for putting this together.
Steve, you're muted.
There, I found my icon finally. So yeah, thank you for indulging me. I thought I've been, spending a fair amount of my time dealing with early informing myself and working through various national organizations that emerging threats to public health. And the two that I'd like to emphasize, which I think are the greatest ones going forward long term, are PFAS as a particular class. That stands for perfluoro or polyfluoroalkyl substances. These are persistent organic chemicals that are the legacy ones that were originally produced before 2015 are bioaccumulative. All PFAS are persistent. Some of them may not be bioaccumulative, but they are persistent, meaning that that's why they're called forever chemicals, because there are no natural processes that will break them down into other substances that are relatively benign. And then the other topic is micro and nanoplastics. Everything we throw out, every plastic that shows up in the environment, eventually gets down to the size of a living cell. And they get ingested by zooplankton, they get ingested by people. They've been shown in human placenta. They've been shown to cross the placental barrier and enter fetal tissue. So they are a threat that is growing. And both of these, I'll mention that both of these substances are subject to increasing attention over the last 5 years in particular, both internationally and nationally. So, and at local levels, state levels and local levels. So PFAS, again, these are a class of chemicals called, the PFAS just stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. Out of some, you can scrape the PubChem database, which has some 66 million compounds and chemical compounds that are registered or known to exist. And of those, about 10% or follow the most definitions of PFAS compounds. So that means that there are 6 million PFAS compounds that are floating around out there potentially. However, out of those 6 million, something like the estimates are something like 300 to 400 of them have been produced in large quantities over the last 80 years. These chemicals were invented basically in 1938, and they played a role during World War II, and they started to go into consumer products in 1948. So going forward here, I'm going to just quickly go through these slides because I'd like to leave some time for Q&A. But anyway, there's different class definitions of PFAS. And the current EPA definition is at least 2 adjacent carbon atoms, where one carbon is fully fluorinated and the other is at least partially fluorinated. Until further notice, they say their definitions coming under constant revision, under criticism from mostly from various manufacturers, chemical manufacturers. And so you can compare this definition to the European Chemical Agency, ECHA, per their REACH authority. Some time ago, the European Union passed a legislation called the REACH Authority. That's just the acronym. And it made the European Chemicals Agency, the ECHA, responsible for eventually eliminating PFAS, except for non-essential uses, based on what has been known for years about their toxicity and their threats to both public and ecological health. So as such, they're regulated in Europe as part of what are called persistent organic chemicals, because these are organic chemicals that are persistent. And the toxicity of most of them is unknown, because because manufacturers have been allowed to make millions of metric tons of these compounds without really subjecting them to meaningful toxicology data, toxicology studies. And so, as I mentioned before, their shared properties are, many of them are bioaccumulative, meaning that they can concentrate in living tissues up to factors of several thousand. When those compounds exist in the environment, in the air or the water, they are all persistent because there's no natural process to break a carbon-fluorine bond. And many of them that have been studied are also toxic. In terms of the regulation, there's a problem because most toxicities are measured in what's called acute exposures, which means that if you give an organism a certain dose, when do they show symptoms of toxicity? And but because these compounds bioaccumulate and they're persistent as well, and they will have additive effects in that most of these PFAS chemicals, the individual concentration of each doesn't mean as much as the total concentration of all of this class, because they interact in similar ways with living tissues. And so their toxicities are additive, not negligible in terms of their individual chronic acute toxicities. Also, there's very little data because on chronic exposures, meaning long-term lower doses. So these kind of exposures are generally just too expensive to be performed, and so people are reluctant to do these, even in except for drugs, for example, because pharmaceuticals, when they begin human testing, you need to have a small population exposed in a phase 3 trial, clinical phase 3 trial, to see if there are any chronic exposures. And you're only allowed to dose people, once they're marketed, you're only allowed to dose people up to the doses and the times that were studied in the phase 3 clinical studies. And these cost hundreds of millions of dollars in many cases. So that's kind of the general picture. They've been manufactured since 1938 and introduced widely into basic consumer goods. Some things that you all might remember are Scotchgard, which was heavily marketed in the 60s. You could buy spray cans and spray this stuff on any fabric that you didn't want to have stained. Like the Ecology Center a few years ago took swatches of most of the marketed car seats, infant car seats, and most of them had heavy doses of PFAS, because everybody knows, how quick infant car seats get contaminated with food and milk and things like that. So, one of the problems here is that because consumer acceptance wasn't what DuPont and 3M wanted, Scotchgard, they approached the carpet companies, drapery manufacturers, furniture companies, and clothing manufacturers, and convinced them to just have all their much of their materials coated before they actually entered the market. So they were entered during a manufacturing process, which is in fact caused quite alarming contamination of the Colusa River in Georgia, where it turns out most of the carbon manufacturing in the United States happens just west of Atlanta. But we've all been exposed through this in indoor air and through, through just transfer from hand to mouth transfer over the years. The other is Teflon, and a major contaminant is AFFF. This is a Class B firefighting foam, which has caused a lot of contamination in airports and where there are fire training areas. Many airports around the world have already outlawed the use of PFAS in firefighting with aircraft fires. The DoD, the Department of Defense, will not do that probably, especially the Navy. So when you get down to it, the only real essential use for PFAS in these firefighting foams should be tank farm fires and military aircraft, especially on naval ships. So, but also, like most salesmen do, they've put it in many cosmetics, especially lip gloss and eyeliner. Cosmetics that might traditionally run, if people are tearing or eating or something like that or drinking. So, and then Gore-Tex, of course, we all are familiar with Gore-Tex. Most of us do a lot of outdoor activities. That is PFAS. It turns out that probably out of most consumer products, clothing, outdoor clothing probably constitutes something like 40% of the total use of PFAS in consumer products. PFAS has even been included in toilet paper, especially the cheaper brands. It's in lubricants. Car washes, the Environmental Working Group fingered car washes. A lot of the products that are used in car washes, if you get a deluxe treatment, contain PFAS. So so that's another means of it entering, the sewers and the wastewater streams. And many cleaning products contain PFAS, especially for linoleums and things like that, and wood floors. An investigation in New Hampshire revealed that a major source of pollution, PFAS pollution to their wastewater, was coming from schools. And it turned out that the schools were using PFAS for buffing and polishing other linoleum floors. So last year I contacted the public schools here in Ann Arbor and some people at the University of Michigan Health Center to just make them aware of this, because as you know, there's still no Truth in Labeling Act. There's no truth in labeling about what's in cleaning products, and these are sold directly to consumers. So they're a major source of contamination that could easily be gotten rid of, because PFAS is not necessary to get performance on any of these applications. So now, just to switch to micro and nanoplastics, I'm going to abbreviate this as MNP. So micro is just defined as any plastic particle less than 5 millimeters or half a centimeter. And nano, these eventually break down to particles that are termed nanoplastics, and these are less than 1 micron in size, which is about the size of a living cell. It turns out several academic studies over the last 10 years have actually revealed that maybe half of them come from tire wear. Tires are plastic. And actually the Ecology Center here did an investigation of microplastics coming into the Huron River, of which there are substantial numbers, and it turns out they're coming from every stream entering the Huron River. And that's since been, and they were surprised at this, and it's since turned out that, most of these particles, of course, are so light that they're airborne. They're airborne, they get deposited on the ground, and then eventually they get into surface waters. So, and then, of course, there's the disposable single-use plastics that are degraded in the environment. There's some 300 million metric tons annually that are produced from plastics. And the source, of course, is 430 million metric tons of plastics produced annually worldwide. I already mentioned clothing and fabrics, that about 60% of of these plastics come from clothing and fabrics, because of course worldwide, about 60% of all clothing and fabrics are plastics now, not natural fibers. And then, of course, there's nurdles. You've seen this, reports of this on occasion, like I think at Great Lakes now. Nurdles are used as manufacturing materials, and these escape shipping containers and show up washing up on the beaches. They're small pure plastic particles that are about half a centimeter across that are used in manufacturing other plastics. And then, of course, some microbeads were manufactured in the 60s, and they were included in personal care products as exfoliating agents. These are plastics. The Obama administration banned them in 2015 after public awareness increased, during the 90s and the early 2000s. So what is their fate? They're ingested and inhaled at roughly equal amounts because, as I mentioned, they're small enough that they're airborne and can be inhaled. Therefore, they quite often interfere with respiratory functions. And there are currently about 450 peer-reviewed publications. If you look at PubMed, you can see about 450 peer-reviewed publications per year over the last 2 years. So there's finally been enough funding for academic research so that more and more information is coming out every week. So, and just as an illustration, it's estimated, there's one study, I've put the citation in here, it's from eBiomedicine, 2023, volume 97, page 104, 828. And they measured around, at an average, around 400 micrograms per kilogram of body weight per day is absorbed in preschoolers, through their bottles, through their feeding, and through inhalation of microplastics that are actually coming out of the plastic bottles that are used for beverages, and also in the carpets in these facilities. So in terms of regulation, it's been slow and ineffectual. There's enormous resistance from manufacturers, and who also on the legislative side, and of course there's been regulatory capture on the executive side. The United Nations declares PFAS as a class of persistent organic pollutants that are regulated through the Stockholm Convention, which was passed many years ago. And M&P microplastics are regulated through the UN Environmental Policy Office. And you can see they published a study called From Pollution to Solution in 2021 that has quite a lot of details. There are ongoing discussions now within that UN group, and they're supposed to propose an international treaty by 2024 to regulate plastics. This originally came, of course, out of awareness of contamination in the ocean. But it's since been revealed that even our children are contaminated with these particles. So the European Union, of course, is leading regulation through their REACH authorization, which was initiated some years ago, and it's being implemented through the Chemical Agency. So you can look up those websites and see more details. But Congress has never authorized EPA and the FDA to fully protect human health. And I think these two chemical substances, I think, illustrate this fact, because both of them have been manufactured for decades. Everybody's been exposed to them. And the current system that works, TSCA is the Toxic Substances Control Act that was originally passed in 1976. And it was mildly amended in 2015 or 2018. But the states can do a lot. They're authorized to do a lot of their own regulation through the Clean Water Act. And then with wastewaters, it's especially through the National Pollution Discharge Elimination the NPDES permits that for example, the Ann Arbor wastewater treatment plant is required to file a permit for whatever discharges the wastewater treatment plant in Ann Arbor releases to the river. So you can see the Safer States website for details of state legislation on PFAS and MNPs. And this is a very good aggregated information site that you can look at. Safer States is a NGO that collates all this information. So the underlining there means that there's an embedded link there. So if you have the PDF file, you can click on that directly. But you can just do an online search if you like. And local governments will have increasing responsibilities to address PFAS pollution because EPA, for example, recently announced that they are going to begin regulating PFAS discharges from municipally owned wastewater treatment plants. So we'll see how that progresses over the next few years. So I think in this forum, I think I just wanted to point out the potential PFAS liabilities for Ann Arbor. EPA has broadened testing of PFAS through their unregulated contaminant monitoring rule. Number 5, that's ECMR 5, which is currently in progress. Sampling was done last year. There's the previous sampling was done of PFAS was done in ECMR 3, which only tested for PFOS and PFOA, the legacy PFAS. This because of the the revelation of such broad contaminations, including to Ann Arbor's drinking water. The ECMR 5 added many other common species of PFAS into their testing program. So these data sets are starting to come out. They can be seen online. They can be downloaded into spreadsheets. And they're going to begin to issue, and they're in the process under the Biden administration. The EPA is issuing new rules and regulations to limit exposures to PFAS, which has been a real dynamic change from the past. So in terms of drinking water, we saw the Michigan MPART program, the Michigan PFAS Action Response Team, which it was a multi-agency task group set up by Governor Snyder in 2018 to test for PFAS exposures in drinking waters, mostly larger municipal programs that served over 5,000 households. There are smaller, of course, drinking water systems that really have not yet been tested under this aegis. And you can all recall that the city installed new GAC filtration to trap the PFAS a couple of years ago. So that's been done. So we're no longer exposed to PFAS in Ann Arbor. A question in my mind was, how long has this been going on? And it's probably been going on for decades. So I had my own blood tested. You can buy a kit online. It used to cost $400, now costs $700, but you can, through Eurofins, you can have your own blood. There's a finger stick test. You can do at home and send it to Eurofins, and they will test your blood for PFAS. So my blood comes out somewhere, I'd say in the third quartile, upper third quartile of the average of blood that's been tested over random sample in the United States. So everybody in the city was exposed to PFAS for decades, and it's in our blood. It's causing marginal morbidity, probably, but the healthcare system here in Ann Arbor is not really aware of this. At least the doctors I've talked to, haven't expressed any awareness of the fact that this contamination has been going on in this population. In terms of wastewater and stormwater, so the EPA has requested PFAS analyses as part of renewed NPDES permits. This announcement came on December 6, 2022. So how to respond to this? Treatment removal strategies are expensive and pretty ineffective. So reducing PFAS inputs to the sewer system is the optimal strategy. And how can we do that? The first thing we can do is pre-treat legacy landfill leachate, which is already going into the sanitary sewer, and that's through our wastewater treatment plant. I'm not aware if our landfill leachate has been tested for PFAS yet, but it's likely to be a major contributor, a major input to our wastewater treatment plant. You can investigate potential point sources like car washes, UM facilities, the Ann Arbor Public Schools, etc. And what we can do is reduce general consumer products containing PFAS. Another waste product that the city releases into the environment are the biosolids. These are the solids that are left over from the wastewater treatment plant, where the wastewaters are discharged to the river, but the biosolids traditionally have been applied to agricultural lands as a soil amendment. However, these are extensively contaminated with PFAS. EGLA, a couple of years ago, set limits for the amount of PFAS. They set guidelines for how much biosolids should be tested for PFAS, but using just a limited set of these chemicals for testing. And they set rules for how much PFAS you were allowed to have to spread on agricultural lands. But if you remember, Brian Steglitz told us a couple of months ago or last year, that the city's decided to stop applying its biosolids onto agricultural lands and direct them to landfills, which I think was a very good proactive decision. So I'm just going to mention Grostic Farm as an example. This is a farm near Heartland. It was a beef farm, a family-owned beef farm whose pasture lands were spread with wastewater biosolids coming from the Wixom City wastewater treatment plant, which, as you recall, was a pass-through for the Tribar contamination that went on downriver to contaminate our drinking water. So his farm was shut down because his beef was had high levels of PFAS in it. So again, there's a link there. You could look at a Vice news report that came out on this that's available online for free. And there are other examples, but I have, through a couple of organizations, I've been lobbying the state legislature about what to do about this. And so far, they've turned a cold shoulder. And the only response we got were basically self-serving. But we're hoping that this new legislature will take this on, and we're also working on trying to get some funding available for farmers who can no longer grow food on their lands, trying to help make them whole, to try to get those funds in the Farm Bill that's being negotiated early next year. So I'll just leave it at that. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Any criticisms? And John.
Got a couple of questions.
Yeah, I just want to say, Steve, no questions about your presentation, but definitely a question on the status of our whole system, right? Yes, I am having trouble seeing people.
Oh, John had his hand up.
Okay, John Mursky.
Thank you. A couple of questions. First of all, I'm wondering if polluter pay or extended producer responsibility legislation would cover any of this in the first case in terms of spills. Secondly, just in the case of things entering the environment, would this extend to PFAS as well as to micro and nanoplastics?
I'm not sure about that because it's the polluter pay legislation is addressed mostly to legacy sites. And one of the problems here is that the EPA, I believe, still has not officially designated any PFAS as a hazardous substance.
Okay, so that apparently would not be the case.
And
the other question that I had is, I'm wondering if you could make some recommendations on what we might be able to do individually to minimize our exposure, as well as potentially minimize our contribution to the problems. I mean, I'm thinking buy more natural fiber clothing. If you've got synthetics, I've heard that if you use the general cycle and wash on cold, because it's a lot less aggressive, you reduce the amount of microplastics or nanoplastics introduced into the washing by up to 70%. I know that some brands like Patagonia are eliminating PFAS. Obviously, things like synthetic carpeting. What kind of things should need to be done systemically, as well as what can we do individually?
Yeah, that's a big question, and there are a lot of sources of information. So I could provide a data sheet. I think I should provide a data sheet to people to distribute as they wish. But yeah, outdoor clothing, it's a good idea not to buy non-natural fibers. Of course, we all have dust from natural sources that are also entering our lungs and things like that. But these plastic particles are something different because they also attract other toxic substances, like they have plasticizers in them that are known endocrine disruptors. And they seem to, when they're in water, of course, they are able to absorb quite a lot of toxins that are in the water. They would prefer to bind to plastic rather than float in the water. So that's one thing you can do. Another thing is be careful when you buy something that says repels grease and repels water. Anything that says repels grease or water, be really careful of that, and or claims to. And whenever you buy something, this needs to go up the supply chain, because there is no truth in labeling. And you ask the manufacturer of a consumer product, and they have no idea whether there's PFAS added into their products. But if you can just get the message to go up the supply chain, that's I think the only thing we can do right now. And of course, the more people that complain about it to their elected representatives, the more the power of the money, the bribery, the naked bribery that goes on in legislatures and in Congress, the more you reduce the impact of those bribes in decision making.
Steve, I see that Brian Steglitz has his hand up.
Yeah, Brian.
Yes, if I may, I just wanted to comment on the polluter pay legislation. So this is something that we have been tracking. There are many versions of this floating around in the Michigan legislature right now. Whether they all get resolved and what happens, I guess, remains to be seen. We have been advocating. We have a lobbyist in Lansing who is advocating on behalf of the polluter pay legislation. We believe that it's possible that it could include things like PFAS. So I wouldn't say that that's mutually exclusive right now from what some of the versions are that are floating around. So we're going to continue to watch and advocate. Our city administrator's office is pretty heavily involved in this also. So just wanted to we'll keep you updated as we learn more and how that develops. But it is something we're paying attention to. And then just one final comment on sort of the regulatory arena. PFAS, microplastics, both pretty dynamic issues in the water space. There's lots of things happening. There's different states are taking different approaches. EPA is getting to be, is proposing legislation, and we're compliant with the federal standards that have been proposed by EPA on PFAS in drinking water. So we're pretty well positioned to deal with what's coming down the road. But it's also something that we're keeping an eye on. Microplastics, California is probably taking the lead on that more than any other state. So we're watching what's happening around the country and learning from what other states are doing and making sure that we're keeping pace. We've always chosen as a utility to try to achieve what the most stringent standards are anywhere in the country, even if they're not in Michigan. And we continue to follow that and meet those standards. One other resource for you, if you're not aware, is we put out a monthly water quality newsletter where we provide current information on these types of issues when we're facing them. So it's something that you could use and share if you want to know what's going on topically in the water space.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Brian. Yeah. I'm really proud that we have such a proactive culture here in the city. But I also would like to ask you, Brian, what sources of information you think are, would you think the sources of information I pointed out are appropriate, and what do you think the commission can do to help educate our residents?
I guess I have to give that some more thought. So I can give some more thought to that and get back to you all. I think one of the challenges with PFAS specifically, and even microplastics, is that there's a lot of misinformation as well as information. So making sure that we're getting it from reliable sources. We put links on our website to, things that we think are valid. With PFAS, we're looking at EPA and, some obviously established resources. And MPART Michigan is probably one of the most, if not the most progressive state in terms of dealing with PFAS. I think we're the only state in the country where all municipal water systems have been tested. So I think that's really positive, and they have a lot of resources. So those are the places that we look. But, I know some of the areas where you've looked are some of the published research, and obviously that is pretty dynamic, and there's things coming out all the time. So we may not be as up to speed on some of that, but once it sort of hits the mass with the regulatory agencies and those places where, I guess I'll add one other source is the Water Research Foundation. It's a pretty much a vetted source. It's peer-reviewed research. We participate. We are a member, subscriber of that organization. So that's probably one of the places where we go first when we're looking for information on some of these topical water issues.
I see Commissioner Nedrich has her hand raised.
Thanks. Yeah. So I guess, Steve, I just kind of wanted to throw in like some knowledge I have from working at the state. So we do get a lot of inquiries about microplastics at the Water Resources Division. So we've been looking at potentially hiring someone like a specialist to work specifically on microplastics as part of our like emerging contaminant group. So that's one thing the state has been talking about. We've talked about monitoring as well in surface waters of the state. I'm going to guess, given like budgetary issues and other things we have going on, it might not be like, 2 years until we actually get that project up and running. But there is definitely, a lot of internal discussions going on in that. How to address microplastics. We've also talked about looking at developing an aquatic life standard similar to what they've done in California. So those are all things that we're thinking about and talking about. Of course, microplastics are super complex. They're not, single contaminant exposures like how our laws are drafted to address. So it gets a little dicey, and it's requiring a lot of like coordination and upper level management input, which slows things down. So
yeah, well, thanks. No, I appreciate that Eagle is paying attention to this, but there really is no alternative to just eliminating all non-essential uses of plastic. I mean, we'll never get rid of it. It's such a great cheap manufacturing material, but it's in our car, it's the molding on our cars. There's a lot of basic things that are plastic, but at least if we can get rid of the disposable stuff, that's a big one.
I've also been in touch. So there is a Michigan Microplastics Coalition that I believe they're through they're partnering with Sierra Club and one other activisty group. I don't know if you've come across them, Steve, but I think the leader is Art Hirsch. If you have any interest to getting in touch with him, I have his contact, and he's just really knowledgeable and has like a little fact sheet he's been taking to the legislature and stuff. So
yeah, there's a whole ecosystem of NGOs, and groups that are working on this problem now. Yeah. Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Nice topic of introduction for you, Erin, right? I hope, yeah.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
we'll move forward. So with that, I appreciate your presentation, Steve. Thanks. It's really an important issue that we all need to think about, and look forward to more updates as time goes on. I would like to move us now into looking at our next item, which is a new business item that I'm introducing tonight. It's a little bit, what do I want to say? A little bit outside of the range of the Environmental Commission, but it's where the Environmental Commission and energy overlap. The issue is one of looking at where we get our electricity in the future, with the coordinating with the A20 program and the goal of having 100% renewable energy as the source for our electricity in the future, ideally by 2030. That's a really challenging goal that we have ahead of us. And I will just let you all know that I have been a volunteer and involved with a group called Arbor for Public Power. And that's an interest of mine, but it's also, I think it's, I want to say, it's something that is a coordinating kind of thing with the whole effort to move us forward quickly to address climate change. And that's just something that's affecting all of us and the topics that we're all interested in. I don't know if Joe, if you could possibly pop up the resolution as drafted. I'm presenting it tonight for discussion and question, not for a vote, but I would very much like your comments. The intent of this is really to support moving forward quickly to making a transition with respect to the source of our electricity. And Ann Arbor itself, I don't anticipate us to be producers of electricity other than solar and geothermal types of things. But we do have an influence on our surrounding areas. So the goal is really to reduce the use of fossil fuel powered electricity production. And I see this as within the scope of our responsibility because we are charged to address the clean air, water, and land in our public health. So that's what brings this forward. The Office of Sustainability has issued and received a report called a Phase 1 feasibility study that addressed looking at the sustainable energy utility. I may have to ask Joe for some help on describing that as needed, but this is for a kind of a complementary side of that program, which is to say that that first study indicated that it is possible and feasible to have a municipally managed electric company that would be managed by the city and separated from DTE as our electric producer. And that would provide us with the opportunity to gain control of the sourcing of the electricity, its management, its maintenance, in ways that I believe in the future would be more reliable and cleaner. So the Phase 1 has completed. And so this resolution asks for a Phase 2 assessment of electricity production that would address the real detailed issue of how much it would cost, the assessment of the equipment that would have to be purchased, the management process, et cetera. It's more detailed, that would allow people in the community to help make a decision. So I'm hoping that you all had a chance to look this over. I prefer not to read it out loud but if we need to, I will do that. I'm hoping that you have questions, comments. I see no hands. Okay. Vice Chair Brown, your question? Oh, Steve, you're muted. Sorry.
Dissolve clause, I would consider amending it because just because the reason for this is not to ease the burden of the currently unreliable source of electricity, because that the unreliability aspect of this is based on the distribution system that DT owns, not the electricity system.
Okay. What would you suggest? Happy to accept suggestions. And we're this is first pass.
I'd just say to attain carbon neutrality. Let's see. How would you say that? Just to better meet the A20 carbon neutrality goals.
Mm-hmm.
Or to consider this option.
I agree.
Okay.
Consider this option for attaining the A20 goals.
Okay, good.
I think that's a friendly amendment.
I like it.
Agree. Second that.
Thank you, Chris. Councilmember Ackman? Uh-oh, no, I don't see you.
Oh, you're muted.
Hi, sorry. I lowered my hand, but I didn't unmute. Sorry, I was trying to hold off to let other people speak, but it seemed like people weren't rushing to raise their hands. So here I am. Thanks for putting this together. And I certainly think it's within the realm of this commission to put forth such a resolution and understand why you all would be interested in doing so. I guess what I would say is that I think, and I know that we're not voting on this tonight, but if I were to make a suggestion, it would be to probably hold off until the staff has been able to review the whole thing and come back with the report, just because I know that personally as a council member, I am waiting to get that just because the report was so technical and so detailed. And I did reach out to Dr. Stoltz a couple weeks ago now to ask her, approximately what the timeline would be, because I had a constituent reach out. And, they're working really hard to fit the review of the materials into everything else that they're doing. I think, as we all know, they're doing some really ambitious things. She said there's a lot of content to review, and they just got some of the final models 2 to 3 weeks ago. So anyway, I just, they need to understand the results, calibrate them for Ann Arbor, gather the data that they need to come forth with a recommendation. And so I would just suggest, and she's saying that's probably going to be January or early February, or it could be longer. I guess I would just suggest that anything that this commission would put forward would probably be better time to happen then.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think that's reasonable. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for doing that extra check-in. Any other comments? John Mirsky?
I have a couple comments.
Yep.
I support what Councilmember Ackman said. I think it makes sense to wait for the final report. We have the draft report. The Energy Commission and lots of other people independent of the Energy Commission provided input. As Councilmember Ackman mentioned, a couple of things that I think could potentially impact the final report. One is legislation, and granted, the 2030 or the A20 plan has a target of carbon neutrality by 2030. But there's new legislation that was just signed by the governor that establishes new renewable portfolio standards. I think it's 60% by 2030, 80% by 2035, and 100% by 2040. And that would have an impact on, I think, some of the assumptions and costs that are in the draft report. Secondly, and one of the things that I submitted as comment and hopefully will be in the final report is that because the report really focuses on 2030 and doesn't really look after that, there is the need for offsets in the A20 plan. And the cost of those offsets could be substantial, certainly in 2030, but what the report doesn't consider is what the cost is after 2030. And if some of the actions in the plan do not deliver the results to the degree desired or assumed in the plan, then the cost of those assets, those offsets in the case of, for example, a sustainable energy utility, the cost of those would be a lot higher. So there's a number of different things that I think are really important and that would hopefully come out in the final draft of the report. The one caveat that I would provide, maybe in contrast to what I just said and what's been proposed by both me and Councilmember Achman, is that what we might consider is a resolve clause that asks the city to start work on an RFP so that we know what the cost would be for the study. I don't know if we have a reliable estimate for what a phase 2 cost is. I know that there's some estimates that have been thrown out there, but typically what we do in a lot of these things, and this is true of a lot of organizations, is we do everything sequentially. And by doing things sequentially, things take a lot longer. And if we had work on an RFP, if there was general belief that a phase 2 is going to be something that we should seriously consider, then we should know what that cost would be. And then if indeed the report bears out the need for a phase 2, then we would know what the cost is, and we'd be able to weigh the cost and benefits versus what's in the report. So that might be something that this group might consider, and that council that might also consider together with OSI.
Good idea.
Yeah, I think that's good. Thank you. The reason we have group input. Any other comments or suggestions?
So are you going to wait till meeting in January to confirm the resolution, or are you going to edit the resolve clause and do it tonight?
We could edit the resolve clause and just hold it, and then decide. Oh boy, I don't know. Well, what do y'all think? We could get the language ready. Jen Mirsky.
If I understood correctly, the earlier exchange was to eliminate this phrase to ease the burden of currently unreliable source of electricity and change it to, basically accelerating the activities to achieve A20 targets. But I think, as recommended or as implied by one of the comments, public comments, is that there are costs that aren't captured by that due to unreliable source of electricity. And I think what some people are arguing is that if the city had its own municipal utility, that the reliability of that utility would be higher than DTE's. There's a lot of objective data out there that shows that DTE is not a very reliable utility. And so I'm not so sure that we really want to cut this resolved clause, or at least the reference to unreliable sources of electricity. I think we definitely want to mention achieving A20 goals. So that was what I just wanted to throw out there if we're going to try to wordsmith this tonight.
Okay. I see Councilmember Ackman's hand.
I wanted to speak to the suggestion that I think the suggestion that I heard was to potentially ask for something else, which would be something sooner than the staff recommendations based on the report, which was to like in tandem do an estimate of what the phase 2 is. And I mean, I get the impression that we have a decent enough estimate. I guess I'm a little reluctant given what I just shared with you all about just how much work OSI has to spin up a number of new programs and then to like evaluate this. I mean, I appreciate the idea of doing things in tandem, but to me, it feels like adding something on when it's already, it's challenging to fit this in. So I guess I'd rather them focus on the evaluation of the phase 1 draft report that they have than piling on additional things.
Right. Right. I could see doing that at this point. But once they have their assessment, it seems like it would be reasonable to move forward with considering at least drafting an RFP for phase 2. So I'm going to suggest that we hold on wordsmithing live during this meeting. And I would be very happy if there are any volunteers who would like to talk with me about this and come up with an alternative we could circulate. I see Chris Graham's hand.
I'm not sure I'm the right person to be volunteering, but this particular calendar year, we had storms through Ann Arbor that were extraordinary. I'm fully supportive of working on different sources of electricity one way or another, if that's what we're doing with a municipal utility. But unless we bury our utility lines, which is extraordinarily expensive, we're not going to change the reliability that most people are talking about, which was down power lines in a huge percentage of the city's area and lots of other areas in Southeast Michigan. So I just caution that there are a lot of people very emotional about being out of power for days and days. It had nothing to do with whether the power plants were working. It had to do with down power lines. And for us to assume the responsibility for those in the city of Ann Arbor will be, it'll be a major hit to our tax requirements.
I think we don't know that, yes, Chris, is my feeling on it. But
well,
because
I've been cleaning up after storms for more than 40 years. The only one I remember in most of that 40 years, apart from the ones this year, happened in 1980. We had a derecho come through town and it really tore the place up. Since then, there have been nothing like we had multiple ones of this year in terms of number of power lines down. It wasn't a failure of power sources. It was increasing, and probably we have to figure out how to deal with that, but increasingly strong storms and taking down the aerial power lines. And so we have to be careful what we ask for here. Thank you.
Sure. Yep. Thank you. Steve.
Yeah, I'm supportive of this goal, but for example, I mean, one example I know of is Boulder, Colorado. And just a quick, internet search will tell you that it was estimated to cost anywhere from $350 million to $800 million to acquire DTE's assets within the city, which is just a distribution system, which I don't think anybody wants. So I would, in exploring what the options are, I would put that off the table and think about and broaden the search so that you would consider other ways of building a distribution system, instead of just instead of just trying to pay for DT's infrastructure, if that's possible. Right. I mean, I would just want to broaden the search, so whatever we pay for, doesn't just give you one option.
Sure. I want to just make one comment and then I'll get with you, Councilmember Ackman, is that the city of Lansing has its own municipal power company. And 10 years ago, they had a severe power outage with down lines due to ice and storm. And after that, it was over a week that the power was out for a substantial amount of the city. They did a significant study of the aftermath and came up with something like 100 recommendations of actions to be taken to improve the service. And it has improved significantly since then. I can't tell you the details of the of what they did, but that report is available, and it's an example of a municipal power company taking control and managing its services. I do believe that one of the people who was managing at that time is no longer in that position. That's one thing, but they also did some maintenance that was different, and probably significant management of trees. And I don't know what else, but I'm just saying that it's in terms of it being a local control kind of thing, that's an example of something that turned out better now. And we've looked at Lansing, and even though we're often in different storm cells of intensity, they're nearby and tends to not go out as much or as long as here. So, Councilmember Ackman.
I mean, I think the point is well taken that, if this goes forward to a phase 2 study, if it advances to the steps that are needed to municipalize, the cost is going to be substantial, because not only are we going to have to pay for the existing grid, but once we have that grid, it is not going to be made better without significant investment. So that's 2 huge costs. We don't know how huge, but we know they're huge. So that point is well taken, and I think that's part of the reason why we need the staff evaluation. I did want to say, though, speaking to Commissioner Brown's point about the distribution network, and what I understood you to be suggesting is thinking about potential other means to get there. And I think that's part of what we are doing. So a clear part of the recommendations in phase 1 was around establishing the sustainable energy utility, which is essentially microgrids that sit within the DTE grid and connect houses together. So I feel like that's one example of what you're talking about. Maybe
way to go.
At scale. What's that?
That's a way to go.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. I think broadening the reach is a good thing. So what I think I will do is, I appreciate this discussion. And I'd like to just move offline and do some work on this, and I'll circulate it for additional comment, and we'll appreciate that additional comment as well. Thank you. I would like to move us along to our last item for the evening, and just about left. Which is our look over, and we kind of had an initial review of our legislative recommendations that we had talked about last year, and this was our opportunity to move forward some issues to our state lobbying resources to forward some actions that we feel would be useful to us in the city. And at this point, Joe, could you pop up at least the first document that we started with? And I know there's some other suggestions, and we'll figure out how to deal with those. Thank you. So this is a list from our multiple work groups, and it's still labeled draft. And I guess what I would like to know from the group is if this represents fairly well the kinds of things that we would like to ask our legislative teams to address. And if we want to add anything, delete, edit, and all right. Commissioner Brown.
Yeah, I would like to modify the solid waste parts. I would propose changing that. First of all, I would change number 1. I don't think at this time, given all the toxic concerns of putting organic waste on agricultural lands, that we're in fact, like, for the time being, perhaps a landfill is the most appropriate endpoint for organic waste, especially municipal biosolids. I don't know about compost. I mean, the city's measured its compost, and it's PFAS contaminated as well. But I would just say something like amend Part 115 to prevent organic waste disposal in landfills. Whenever, see, and this is the problem, because many toxic products that could be present in these wastes are not identified for decades.
Mm-hmm.
So I would try to amend it in some way to say that to prevent organic waste disposal in landfills when they're tested and approved by some reliable agency. I don't know. Otherwise, I would just strike it for now, and just maybe replace that with amending Part 115 to require testing of waste disposal before it's done, before it's has any endpoint other than landfills. I mean, there's been a fair amount of discussion about this, that it actually, like, maybe spreading them on like reclaimed mining land or something like that. It might be appropriate, but I'm just reluctant to leave that in there, because the city is in fact currently putting its biosolids into landfills, and I think that's an appropriate response right now.
Right. Okay, I understand. I guess the question is that one that we want to eliminate for this round of something that we would send to the state?
And that would be the easiest thing to do. Because
for now.
For now.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And now for number 2, restrict the sale of all packaging. There have been bills introduced in the state legislature. There are states that have done this, so we could specify the bills. I think maybe Jeff Irwin has already submitted it, but they haven't had time to to get it through committee this year, but maybe next year.
So this would be coordinating with our state senator,
or just mentioning whatever bill we're talking about.
Right. Okay.
And then
is that go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have it on the top of my head. He's been doing it for 10 years. So then number 3, these contaminations prevent, that's not a recommendation. That's just an explanation of number 2. And but I would replace it with encouraging a producer extended producer responsibility act. Because during the last Trash Talk tour, and talking to various people in the community that are closer to this topic than I am, they all agreed that the best way to the best legislation that could be used is extended producer responsibility laws, like the state of Maine and the state of Oregon have already implemented them. And this would help us, give us much more power to control, just the release of potentially toxic substances into the environment, including, the recycling of plastics.
Okay.
Uh,
Other?
yeah. Right.
I see Commissioner Calloway.
Yeah, I wanted to put a plug in again for the what Will Garcia from the city forwarded after our last meeting about banning the sale of toxic mercury lighting in order to accelerate LEDs. I think that fits well in there, and it's something that's, kind of spreading across the country with 5 states having it and 4 more kind of encouraging it. So I'd like to see us add that in.
Is that something that we know there is legislation, or we're just suggesting it as a topic?
Well, we're working on policies we want to promote, right?
Yep.
I don't know that this is anything that's been proposed yet in Michigan.
Right. Okay. Sounds very good. John Mirsky. Thank you.
I'd like to support Steve's proposal, well, also John's as well. Related to extended producer responsibility, we talked earlier about polluter pay and corporate responsibility. Brian made some comments to that about that. So I don't know if that's already on the legislative agenda. It's not on this list, and maybe it's not on this list because it's on the existing list. If both of those are not on the existing list, then I think both of those should be on the list. And I sent this before the meeting to Rita as well as to Joe while looking up some materials for this. I looked at Michigan Clean Water Action's website, and they have a fairly long list of legislative policy priorities. And I looked through the list, and it includes those topics as well as others, and also references when bills that are already have been introduced either in the House or the Senate. And I don't know that we need to go through all those, but I would encourage council to look at those. That doesn't mean they all rise to the level that needs to go on the city's list, but there's a lot of good ideas there, and they all certainly tie to the kinds of things that we're interested in terms of water quality, but they also affect some of the other topics that are on our list in terms of the other categories. So like I said, for the sake of time, it probably doesn't make sense to look at it, but somebody should take a look at those lists and try to harmonize that and decide what really rises to the level of the legislative priorities for the city. That's all.
Okay. If anyone is particularly interested and would like to join me in looking these over and getting them more effectively edited so that we can present them, I will appreciate that. I will say that I've had a little bit of connection with our state representative, Carrie Reingans, on nicotinoids. And she is currently working on a bill to ban the use on public land. And these are neonicotinoids, are the toxic chemical that affects insects usually, but it also can affect birds and has significant, when used on seed in particular, can have dust that spreads into the atmosphere and surrounding areas. It's a really toxic and bad chemical. So that's kind of in order, and I would like to support her action on that. Okay. I thought I saw your hand up there, Steve. Do you have a suggestion?
Yeah, I just volunteer to help you with this. I mean,
yeah,
you objected here in the solid waste field, so I'm sorry I didn't get to that earlier. But
that's okay.
anyway, the another thing that's caused a lot of chagrin in the environmental community is that when these Part 115 bills were passed, there were some lame duck amendments that were added to define pyrolysis as as recycling.
Mm-hmm.
The problem here is that the definition of pyrolysis can mean almost anything you want to make it mean, like chemical recycling. They call it chemical recycling or pyrolysis. It's basically incineration, and it's these terms are used to try to avoid any regulation by the Clean Air Act through the Clean Air Act. So they were put in the last minute, and rather than kill the whole package, which took years and years to negotiate, the legislature just passed them. So, but they are a what do you call it? They're a bad last minute lame duck amendment that needs to be addressed going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So I would suggest adding that to the list as well.
Okay. So we'll talk about that. The question is, I guess, where we are right now is at a point where I had hoped that we'd have a list that we would literally forward from here. I mean, I don't think we're at that point. And I will check with Joe and Sean on what the next steps will be in terms of the legislative process. And if anyone else happens to know it, please let me know. But I think we should move on, and I'll appreciate working with you, Steve, on this. Okay. We are now at the point in the agenda for reports from our work groups and committees. And I'm going to start off with, all right, asking for any comments or updates on the circular economy.
Sure, I can do that or get started. If other folks have things to add, please do so. But we are meeting once a month as the Circular Economy Working Group, plus several folks from city staff. In October, we met with representatives from Madison, Wisconsin. I mentioned that at the last meeting. And this month, we talked with 2 reps from the city of Austin and kind of gathered information about the ordinance they've had in place for about 10 years now. We're continuing to gather all that information and kind of put things together. We're another meeting in December before the holiday break. So that work is kind of continuing on with gathering, and then we'll move into synthesizing that information and seeing if we are ready to move forward with an ordinance or what other steps might need to take place first. The other thing I just wanted to let folks know that there's going to be an upcoming social media campaign around the circular economy map. The city's going to be promoting that. It's still one of the most visited websites for the city in terms of mapping. So we're even going to try to amp that up a bit. So Will Garcia was showing some of the materials that they put together for that. So be on the lookout for that and help promote that resource. Thanks.
That's great. All right. I'm 2 hands up. Commissioner Brown.
Oh yeah, thanks, John. I just recently started participating in this group again, but I was just wondering, has there been any talk of updating the SWRP, the strategic plan for solid waste? Do you know if there's do you know when that's going to be updated? I know the previous one was like 2017. So it's like been 5 years. I don't know how
I don't
often.
know.
Yeah.
But I would suggest that we contact city staff on that. Joe, I don't know if there's somebody you can put us in touch with from that, or I can check with Jenny the next time I talk with her, Jenny and Sarah.
If I can comment, that was my topic as well. Steve and I exchanged emails before the meeting. The current shrimp solid waste resource management plan is running from 2019 to 2023. So it runs out at the end of this year. The previous plan ran from 2013 to 2017. And I looked at the process for the last shrimp. And if you look from the beginning where we had a consultant that helped us develop the plan. So there was an RFP, there was a contract that was let, there was an advisory committee that was named, met several times, just happened to meet at the DDA. Steve and I and some others were a part of that. And then to get to the draft report and the finalized report, that took 2 years. So we're at the end of 2023. And that means that there would be potentially as much as a 2-year gap if we follow the timetable for the last one to update and issue a new one. So hopefully we can get an update on what the status of the shrimp is and what the process will be to updating that. Thanks. That's what I wanted to talk about. Thanks.
Do we have a person who's going to do the follow-up on that? Okay, thank you, John Coward. Great. I'm going to move next to the biodiversity work group with Chris Graham.
We've developed a proposal that's nearly done, I hope, to the fellows of the Graham Sustainability Institute to help us design a City of Ann Arbor less grass initiative. We need Aaron to sign on. I hope it can be Aaron. Brian, not a lot of time for our city representative and not any money from the city. It's paid for by the Institute to engage the fellows beginning probably in January through the end of the school year to help us do this. They would develop elements of a potential program that would encourage property owners to reduce the area of non-native, non-recreational grass across the city. We call it turf grass. Via education, outreach, incentives, perhaps some regulation. Grass would be replaced by trees, shrubs, or herbaceous plantings with preference for native plants in whole or in part. Fellows would look at other communities' efforts in this area and where most other places primarily done for water conservation goals. In our case, it would be done at least as much for biodiversity goals and energy goals, A20 goals. So I was hoping this would be on agenda so you could actually see the document tonight. I'll try to ask Joe or Sean when he's back to get it forwarded to you. Please comment promptly. They're in the final stages of reviews of these proposals over the next few weeks, and hopefully we can go ahead. The committee will be meeting Monday. I'm not sure what's on the agenda. Have to figure that out. Brooks, have you got anything?
I haven't thought about it yet, so.
Okay.
I saw Commissioner Gruber had her hand up.
I would just want to maybe talk more internally biodiversity group before we pass this on to city staff.
Yep. I'm sure we need to. We have to have the city person before we get to proceed at all with the application. So.
We won't make it be a surprise for you, Aaron. Promise. Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks,
I'll check
Chris.
in with Brian on that for sure.
Okay. All right. The next is the water quality working group.
Yeah, I have two things. First of all, just a reminder that the city is under a consent decree with Eagle about nutrient pollution to the Huron River. It's one of 5 communities that have been cited for that. It looks like that's being managed through the Huron River Watershed Council. And Rita and I think Sarah have been invited to the Middle Huron Partners meeting that's held quarterly, to posted by the Huron River Watershed Council, And they're coming up with a plan, which will be publicly available sometime in the near future. So I'm hoping we can review it and maybe talk to our city council members about it at some point in the near future, the first quarter of 2024. And then the second thing is that, and their next quarterly meeting is December 21st. So, and then the other thing is that, we've had residents complaining about petroleum odors in West Park for years, and Commissioner Mitchell recently walked by there and saw some lurking under the ice and took some pictures. And so she and I are investigating with the city staff. We contacted cities to Rita did. So I don't know, Rita, do you want to chime in here?
Well, I haven't heard back, but I know that Joe helped get the staff in touch. I also reached out to the Washington County Water Resources Commissioner's office. They were also going to send someone down. I'll just say it wasn't only the visual presentation. I've heard for years from people about a smell of petroleum in the great area near the pond of West Park, the western tip of it. And it was pretty powerful. And so that was what motivated me to move forward with taking some action. This is an MS4 drain, Aaron. So maybe your experience will help us address some of this in communication with the Water Resources Division of the county. But it's still an open issue. So yeah, we should talk.
Yeah. And then the only other thing is that Eagle has finally started remediation of the Armin cleaner facility there, which is significant perk and contaminated. There's a groundwater plume of perk going towards the Huron River, so they're finally starting some kind of remediation. So we'll see how that's progressing.
Right. It was just a news article about that today. All right. Commissioner or Council Member Dish is not here. She would report on the Planning Commission, so I'm going to bypass that. Next is Energy Commission.
Yes. So the main topic, we also did a review of our bylaws and our calendar, but the main topic I think of interest to this group and more broadly for residents is that we got an update on the city's home energy advisor program. It was referred to in the 820 plan as energy concierge. Julie Roth provided a report, and I encourage people to look at it because this is something that really all citizens hopefully would be able to utilize. A pilot has been done that was used to inform the RFP, and 2 bids have been received. Unfortunately, they came in above budget. And so right now, the scope and the scale of the program is being reevaluated to get together with those bidders. And so right now, there wasn't a timetable given, but it sounded like there's an attempt by OSI to do that as quickly as possible. There's some significant goals related to this in the 820 plan, like serving 2,500 residents by 2025. And hopefully those are not jeopardized. But the plan is really good. The materials that have been developed, the roadmap, there's a value stream map that's been developed that sort of walks both the advisors as well as residents through a decarbonization process that are all really good. Hopefully this is something that will come to fruition rather quickly. So if you're interested in that topic, go to Legistar and look up that report. That's it.
Thank you. Next is Park Advisory Commission, Commissioner Marzan.
Hi, we just met last week. Leslie Science and Nature Center, Susan Westhoff did a presentation for us. They're developing a nature playscape on their property, on the park's property there. And they are doing fundraising for that. And so encourage you all to check that out. West Park at West Park, the Parks Department has completed the phase 1 of gathering of an outreach program to gather feedback on that park due to the band shell that's there that is currently not usable due to the deterioration of the foundation of that building. They're going to be processing, they had over 1,000 responses to their survey, so they're going to be processing that information and getting back to the community in 2024 with ideas. The parks manager reported that the bridge work in Gallup Park has started. So if you're over there, you'll see that there's a new bridge being built to replace the existing one that goes over the car bridge that goes over the river. NAP, the Natural Areas Preservation, is engaged in strategic planning at the moment. I know I saw Rita and Stephen at one of the meetings, one of their community outreach meetings. But if you're interested in getting involved in that, I would go check out the NAP website and see when their meetings are being held. And then they also reported to us that the MDOT fencing project is currently paused. So I'm sure we'll hear more about that sometime in the future, but no fence will go up this winter as far as I know. And then finally, we sent 2 resolutions to City Council to move forward the construction project for the B2B trail through the Barton Nature area. So that work should start, I think, sometime in the winter. That's all I have.
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to that. All right, next up I have Transportation Commission. Councilmember Ackman.
Yep. I wasn't able to attend the last meeting, but I watched it after the fact. We had a presentation from the DDA on their downtown circulation study and curbside management study. And these are 2 things to basically look at how we accommodate the different modes of transit that we need to and that we want to in the future with our transportation plan. So thinking about things like parking allocation and making sure there's enough prioritized spots for people with disability, and making sure that we can accommodate, bus prioritized lanes. We're trying to balance a lot of different modes of transportation to meet our goals, essentially, both for 820 and the transportation plan. So both of those efforts get at that, and they're still in progress, but we got a little report out on it. That's it.
We're still, I think I'm going to ask you, Dharma, if you don't mind, to talk about council as well.
Yes. So I think of the key importance to this group is to know that Councilmember Cornell and I and Councilmember Iyer have been working on a resolution related to banning gas-powered leaf blowers. That came for a first reading at the last meeting and it was postponed. So it will be on the agenda for Monday for a first reading. Because it's an ordinance, it will have 2 readings with a public hearing at the second reading. And we are taking kind of a progressive approach to this because we don't want people to throw out perfectly good working equipment. So we're giving people some time. So it starts by limiting the hours and the seasonality of it. So not being able to use them, it starts with a summer ban from June 1st to September 30th, specifies the hours in which leaf blowers can be used. And sorry, the summer ban is just for the gas powered. You could use electric during this time. And then beginning January 1st, 2028, the use of gas powered leaf blowers would be prohibited at all times in the city. So we think this is giving people enough runway, and look forward to the discussion. It does not, like some communities in its current form, exempt golf courses or large commercial properties or the city, though it has some exemptions for emergency type of things. But we were pretty deliberate in that approach. So that's it.
I see 2 questions. Mr. Callowart.
Yeah, just a question, Darwin, about if there's going to be a public hearing. I didn't see it listed that way in the agenda, but there will
Yeah,
be a
that's
public
because
hearing.
the one coming this next, because it got postponed, it's basically a first reading again. So the
Oh,
first
so the
reading
next
will have
time.
the public hearing, and the next one will have the public hearing. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
And Commissioner Graham.
I'm very proud to say that I've changed my machines from two-stroke gas ones to electric for my property. I still think there's a problem which may be solved over the next several years about commercial equipment being good enough. I have my fingers crossed because I think the council is quite right to get to this. I would include hedge pruners, spin trimmers, small chainsaws. If things progress as I hope they will by 2028, those things can be banned as well. They're all burning gas that's mixed with oil. They are very polluting machines and to some degree noisy. That's not to say the electric stuff is quiet. It's not actually. So if people's motivation is primarily noise, then this will help a little, but won't solve the problem. But pollution is serious from these machines. It's true.
Thanks for that comment. That's encouraging because I know you work with that equipment. All right, I will speak up with the chair's report, which is really short. We already talked about observation of petroleum in West Park. I want to just call out to our attention, because we're the Environmental Commission, that the Conference of the Parties, the COP28, started today. And we should all watch for that, what's going to come out of it. And I hope that it will guide our actions, or that we will guide it perhaps in some ways here to reduce our use of fossil fuels. I want to also point out and say congratulations to Commissioner Gruber, who was given the Rain Garden Leadership Award last month for her work with establishing rain gardens in the city at Arbor Community School and in her own home yard, and just has been a leader in that. So congrats. We talked about the compost audit, and the result of that will, I think what I haven't done is to send that report that we received around to the commission, or was it? Did everybody receive the report of the compost audit? It's useful. See how it happened. Okay. I recommend going out and actually doing the audit. Steve did it twice. I've done it once. It's interesting. And that is it for the most part, except I want to say thank you very much to Joe Lang for stepping in kind of cold, and appreciate your support for this meeting. And welcome, Aaron. I hope to have many conversations with you, and look forward to joining with us on this commission. All right. That is, oh, okay. I would like to let you all know, if you just say that I'm open at any time for a call for agenda items. This is a time to post one or mention one if you would like that for our next meeting. And if not, please contact me in between now and our next meeting, which will be January 25th. We have a big break because we're at that kind of end meeting of the season of the year. All right. I hear no additional agenda items right now. So let's move to our second public comment of the evening. This is an opportunity for persons to speak up for up to 3 minutes. Please call 888-788-0099 and enter meeting ID 922-9696-1644. As you can see listed on the screen, I'm going to read it anyway. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one by calling out the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand, please press *9 on your phone. You'll hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. Plus, press *6 to unmute your phone. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we may hear you clearly. And please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. And Joe, do you see anyone with a hand raised?
I do not. No callers are in the attendees list either.
Okay. Well, in that case, I don't think we even need to wait. So with that, I would like to call for adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Councilmember Ackman and seconded by John Mirsky. And shall we vote to adjourn? Yes. All right. Goodbye. Good night. Have a good holiday, everyone.